thought maybe we should try to make one Marvel movie that was at least as good as the worst Chris Nolan movie, but what the hell was I thinking?
Edward Norton is spilling it all on quitting Marvel and Disney after they cut his salary by a ton. But it turns out there was more to his exit than just the money. And we've got the full scoop on everything, including Ed's masterful revenge. Let's get into it. The rage behind the Green Monster. Them, 2 words, loud, brutal, unmistakable, and they weren't shouted by Bruce Banner mid-Hulk transformation. They were uttered by the man who once was the Hulk, Edward Norton. And make no mistake, he wasn't talking about some random film exec. This was a middle finger aimed squarely at the studio behind the biggest film franchise on Earth, Disney. In what might be the most savage and revealing moment of his career, Norton broke his silence, pulling the curtain back on what really happened behind the scenes. And it's a hell of a lot uglier than anyone imagined. From script clashes to salary slashes to executive manipulation, this wasn't just a falling out. This was a Hollywood war.
You know what went wrong? I wanted a better script. I thought maybe we should try to make one Marvel movie that was at least as good as the worst Chris Nolan movie, but what the hell was I thinking?
That wasn't a joke. That was Edward Norton, speaking on stage, mocking Marvel Studios' creative standards. And that wasn't some offhand comment. It was a shot fired, with precision. You don't name-drop Christopher Nolan, a director known for The Dark Knight, unless you're actively trying to expose how laughably shallow your former employer's creative bar is. But how did we get here? Why did the man once entrusted with playing Marvel's most tragic hero walk away from the most successful franchise in cinema history? And why is he calling them out now, more than a decade later? Let's rewind. In 2008, before the Marvel Cinematic Universe was the global juggernaut it is today, Edward Norton stepped into the role of Bruce Banner in The Incredible Hulk. He wasn't just an actor for hire. Norton, known for deep character-driven roles in films like Fight Club and American History X, had rewritten the script himself. He wanted to make the Hulk more than a monster. He wanted to make him Prometheus.
But Hulk is like the it's Prometheus, right? The guy who steals fire from the gods for people, but he gets burned doing it and is cursed, right? And now he's cursed.
That's not a superhero. That's Greek tragedy. And Norton believed that was what Marvel needed. Substance, pain, humanity. Edward Norton didn't just step onto the set of The Incredible Hulk. He stormed into its very DNA with the white-hot intensity of gamma radiation itself. Forget merely playing Bruce Banner. Norton plunged headfirst into the molten core of the character and the entire film, becoming an obsessive architect determined to forge a Hulk of profound depth and visceral power. His involvement wasn't casual. It was an all-consuming crusade, a relentless push to transcend the typical comic book flick and deliver something raw, psychologically complex, and emotionally shattering. The battle began on the page. Norton, renowned for his fierce intellect and meticulous character dissection, found the existing script lacking the grit and psychological torment he craved for Banner. He didn't just offer notes. He grabbed the script by the throat and rewrote it, extensively and ultimately uncredited. But Norton's Hulk-sized ambition didn't stop at the script. He carried that obsessive dedication straight onto the chaotic sound stages and into the editing bay. Reports swirled of intense, passionate collaborations and sometimes heated clashes with director Louis Leterrier and, crucially, the Marvel Studios executives. Norton wasn't just an actor hitting his marks. He was a producer in spirit, deeply invested in every frame. He advocated fiercely for a tone that balanced spectacular action with genuine character development and suspense. He pushed for a grittier, more grounded visual aesthetic, a Hulk born of terrifying biological consequence rather than pure fantasy. He scrutinized cuts, argued for scenes that deepened the emotional resonance, and championed a pacing that allowed Banner's quiet moments of dread and connection to breathe before the inevitable, building fury erupted. His vision was clear, a Hulk movie where the human drama was as compelling as the smashing, where the monster within felt tragically inevitable, not just a CGI spectacle. Edward Norton didn't just play the Hulk, he wrestled with the entire production, striving with every ounce of his being to make it a landmark of superhero tragedy. And for a moment, Marvel seemed to agree. They let Norton dive into the development process, even allowing him to mold the character's psychology. But behind the scenes, cracks were forming. According to insiders, Norton clashed repeatedly with Marvel over the script. While he envisioned a layered character study, they were fixated on a punch-heavy popcorn flick. The tipping point came when Norton insisted on deeper emotional beats. Marvel didn't just say no, they began freezing him out. The studio wanted a toy-selling franchise. Norton wanted a soul. It was oil and water. And the moment Disney officially stepped into the picture, the game changed completely. completely. After Disney acquired Marvel, Norton found himself silently replaced by Mark Ruffalo without so much as a phone call. No warning, no meeting, just gone. But while Marvel tried to spin it as a creative decision, Norton didn't hold back.
I tried to be like you. I wanted a better script. What the hell was I thinking?
That was sarcasm drenched in bitterness. The line about trying to make one Marvel movie as good as the worst Chris Nolan movie wasn't just a burn, it was a detonation. He was calling the entire Marvel model creatively bankrupt. Years later, Norton opened up in a QAnon interview that shed even more light. When asked whether he'd return to Marvel, his answer was carefully diplomatic, but the real bombshell came when he described his experience with independent filmmaking. That's when he revealed what many believe was the final betrayal. Disney tried to slash his salary. "I did it on my own film. I got scale on Motherless Brooklyn." Now, that sounds noble, until you realize the context. Norton was willing to work for scale, literally the minimum, for passion projects. But when Disney, the biggest entertainment corporation in the world, reportedly tried to lowball him, it was an insult, and the contrast couldn't be clearer. "Everybody did the movie for me for no money so that I could get it done." That cast, Bruce Willis, Alec Baldwin, Willem Dafoe, worked for free out of respect. Disney, they tried to shrink his paycheck while building a billion-dollar empire off his back. It wasn't just about money, it was about control. Marvel wanted someone obedient, someone who would do the green screen stunts, read the lines, smile for the press, and not ask for creative input. Norton, famously intense and articulate, was not that guy. And the most damning part? Disney didn't deny it. In fact, Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige released a public statement that said, without naming names, they wanted someone who embodies the creativity and collaborative spirit of our other talented cast members. Translation: Norton was too difficult. Years later, in interview after interview, Norton has tiptoed around the topic, until now.
I tried to be like you. I wanted a better script. What the hell was I thinking?
That single line did more than any press release ever could. It exposed the deep creative rot at the heart of Marvel's early cinematic decisions, and Disney's willingness to cast aside integrity for marketability. This wasn't just a case of one actor being replaced. This was a pattern of behavior, one that's destroyed careers, buried films, and turned Hollywood's most ambitious artists into corporate pawns. How Marvel gutted its own legacy and blamed the actor. Edward Norton wasn't just another name in the Marvel machine. He was the name, the first true A-lister cast in the post-Iron Man world, an Oscar-nominated heavyweight who brought real gravity to a franchise that, at the time, was still figuring itself out. So when Marvel cut him loose, without a word, it sent shockwaves through Hollywood. But what came next? Even more shocking, they tried to blame him. When Disney's Marvel Studios made the abrupt decision to replace Edward Norton with Mark Ruffalo for the Avengers, fans were stunned. No press conference, no heartfelt goodbye, just a press statement dropped cold onto the internet. Marvel's president Kevin Feige, in a move that many called a professional hit job, announced that the recasting wasn't about money or scheduling. Instead, he framed it as a move toward collaborative creativity, a sly dig at Norton, painting him as difficult and uncooperative. The actual quote, now infamous, was a masterclass in passive aggression. It read in part that Marvel's decision was based on the need for an actor who embodies the creativity and collaborative spirit of our other talented cast members. Translation: Edward Norton was a problem. They didn't say it outright, but they didn't have to. The implication was nuclear. This statement led to a flood of headlines framing Norton as a diva. Articles started popping up, many quoting unnamed sources, accusing him of rewriting scripts behind Marvel's back, refusing reshoots, or being emotionally unavailable on set. But here's what they didn't include: proof. Years passed, and Norton never launched a counterattack. Instead, he let the silence speak volumes. But if you paid attention, the truth still slipped through the cracks. In interviews, in offhand remarks, in the occasional smirk when asked about Marvel. Like in this moment on Joe Rogan's podcast, where he speaks about the Hulk as something deeper, something tragic, something Marvel never really wanted to deal with.
He's still cursed, alone in the world and cursed, right? And there's something pretty heavy in that, and so it wasn't, I thought it was really worth a crack.
I fucking loved it.
This wasn't just nostalgia. This was Norton mourning what could have been. And by that point, it was clear. The dream of doing something artistically meaningful with the Hulk had died the moment Disney took control. Now, don't get it twisted. Mark Ruffalo is a phenomenal actor. Even Norton agrees.
Mark and I came up together in New York. He's one of the best.
And that's important, because Norton doesn't blame Ruffalo. In fact, he praises him. But the real issue isn't who replaced Norton, it's why he was replaced in the first place. Disney needed someone they could control, someone who wouldn't demand script rewrites, someone who'd hit their marks and keep their mouth shut. Ruffalo, being newer to blockbuster terrain at the time, fit the mold, and Disney didn't waste a second exploiting it. Ruffalo showed up, played the part, and stayed quiet about behind-the-scenes drama. That's not criticism, that's the reality of corporate casting. Meanwhile, Norton, who once wanted to portray Hulk as a Shakespearean tragedy, was left in the dust. Why? Because he cared too much. Let's be honest, Edward Norton has a reputation, not as a diva, but as a control freak. Someone who doesn't just act in films, he builds them. And when studios don't share his vision, things get messy. Take American History X. Norton clashed with director Tony Kaye, who later disowned the film. But ask anyone who's seen it, and they'll tell you. Norton's performance is unforgettable, raw, real, haunting. It earned him an Oscar nomination, and he did it by pushing for creative control. He did it again in Motherless Brooklyn, writing, directing, producing, and starring in a film that most actors wouldn't have touched without a massive studio budget. But as Norton explained in this interview, he paid out of pocket, convinced his A-list friends to work for free, and built the movie from scratch. Everybody did the movie for me for no money so that I could get it done. That's not arrogance, that's dedication. So when Marvel executives whispered that Norton was hard to work with, what they really meant was, he won't let us ruin this. Norton wasn't just trying to play a green rage monster. He wanted Hulk to reflect something deeper. As he told Joe Rogan, he imagined Bruce Banner as a man cursed by knowledge, like Prometheus, trying to help mankind, but punished for his ambition.
He's trying to take like the power of nature back out to people from the gods, and he gets burned, and now he's cursed.
This was the Hulk we never got, a story of self-destruction, of a man who can't escape what he's become. Norton had the guts to aim for Greek tragedy. Marvel wanted Saturday morning cartoons. In that same interview, Norton made it clear, he loved the Hulk, not as a gimmick, but as a character study. Edward Norton didn't just want to make a Hulk movie. He was hell-bent on unleashing the real Jade Giant ripped straight from the pulpy, tortured pages of Marvel Comics onto the silver screen. Forget the quippy, later MCU gloss Norton fought tooth and nail, gamma-charged vein bulging, for a Hulk steeped in. The raw, primal essence that made Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's creation a legend, a monstrous, tragic Jekyll and Hyde for the atomic age. His vision was a direct channel to the character's comic book soul, a stark, screaming contrast to the smoothed-over, franchise-friendly direction Marvel ultimately steered towards. Norton understood, deep in his bones, that the Hulk's core power wasn't just his strength, it was his pain. He craved the psychological horror central to the early comics and defining runs like Peter David's. His rewritten script pulsed with Bruce Banner's suffocating dread, the constant, gut-wrenching fear of losing control. This wasn't just about getting angry. It was about the terrifying, body-warping transformation itself, the ripping sinew, the cracking bones, the sheer agony of becoming the monster. Norton pushed for punishing transformations, a far cry from the often painless or even comedic shifts seen later. His Hulk was meant to be a force of nature, terrifying and uncontrollable, not a predictable Avenger or a joke-cracking gladiator. He embodied the monster within trope with brutal sincerity, a walking monster unleashed, driven by rage and fear, closer to the rampaging engine of destruction from the comics than the strategic, talking Hulk Marvel later embraced. Crucially, Norton clung fiercely to the loneliness and alienation that defined Banner for decades. His script emphasized the fugitive life, the paranoia, the impossibility of connection. Banner wasn't a hero networking with gods and super soldiers. He was a haunted man, utterly alone, hunted relentlessly by figures like General Ross, portrayed not just as an antagonist, but as a near-mythic Ahab figure obsessed with the beast he helped create. Norton fought for a grittier, more grounded tone, a world where the Hulk felt like a terrifying biological accident with real-world consequences, echoing the Cold War anxieties of the character's origins. He reportedly even pushed for the classic Grey Hulk initially, a direct nod to the comics' roots, before studio mandates forced the green. This stood in absolute defiance of the MCU's later trajectory, the bright cosmic adventures, the seamless integration, the transformation of the Hulk into a quip-dispensing sidekick whose inner turmoil became a punchline, not the point. The final, studio-mandated cut of The Incredible Hulk neutered much of Norton's darker, more complex vision. The deeper character moments were sacrificed for more smash, the psychological torment diluted, and the subsequent MCU exile of the Hulk character, culminating in the jarringly comedic Professor Hulk, proved how completely Marvel abandoned Norton's path. Norton's Hulk was meant to be a gamma-charged Greek tragedy, a character study of rage and repression, a being whose very existence was a curse. He wanted the raw, pulsing heart ripped from the comic book panel, the monster, the fear, the loneliness, the sheer terrifying weight of being Bruce Banner. Marvel chose a smoother, safer, ultimately less resonant path. Edward Norton saw the true comic book Hulk, a figure of profound pathos and uncontrollable fury, and poured his soul into bringing that beast to life. The MCU, in the end, opted for something far tamer, leaving Norton's far more more faithful, far more devastating vision forever trapped, raging, just beneath the surface. And maybe that's what hurt the most. They took the thing he loved and made it tame. Here's where it gets even more outrageous. Marvel went on to do exactly what Norton asked for, but years later, after they got rid of him, look at the tone shift in WandaVision, Moon Knight, even parts of Avengers Endgame. Suddenly, complex character arcs and emotional trauma were in. Suddenly, Marvel was okay with darker, slower, introspective storytelling. Norton wanted that from the beginning, and for it, they blacklisted him. They called him difficult, but then built an empire on the very themes he fought for. And not once have they acknowledged it. Not once have they said, hey, maybe Edward was onto something. Let's not pretend Disney suddenly had a problem with creative input. They've worked with strong voices before. Taika Waititi, James Gunn, Ryan Coogler, all directors who infused Marvel films with personal style. But there's one difference. Those directors knew when to play ball. Norton, he didn't want to play the game. He wanted to rewrite the rules, and that's why he had to go. Norton's revenge, how he exposed Hollywood's corporate rot. If you thought Edward Norton was finished after Disney tossed him aside, think again. This wasn't just the story of an actor losing a role. This was the story of a masterclass in revenge, executed not with lawsuits or press smears, but with art. Because after Disney cut his salary, ghosted him out of the MCU, and tried to paint him as difficult, Norton didn't back down. He went to war on his own terms. And with Motherless Brooklyn, he proved he didn't need Marvel. Marvel needed him. Hollywood had no interest in funding Motherless Brooklyn, a noir detective story based on a 1999 novel with jazz, corruption, stuttering detectives, and no guaranteed box office franchise. In the age of capes and CGI, studios saw it as box office poison. So Norton said, fine, I'll do it myself. He wrote the script, he directed it, he produced it, and he starred in it. Oh, and he paid himself minimum wage. I got scale on Motherless Brooklyn. Let that sink in. After being lowballed by the largest entertainment company on the planet, Norton turned around and willingly took less for a film he actually believed in. But that's not even the wildest part. While Disney was busy slashing Norton's Marvel salary, Norton was calling in favors from some of the biggest names in Hollywood. And not only did they show up, they refused to be paid. Bruce Willis and Alec Baldwin and Willem Dafoe. Everybody did the movie for me for no money so that I could get it done. These weren't bit part actors. These were megastars. And they signed up not for a franchise or for fame, but because they believed in Edward Norton. Compare that to Disney, who tossed him aside the second he didn't fit the mold. It's not just an insult, it's a tragedy. Make no mistake, Motherless Brooklyn wasn't just a movie. It was Norton's retaliation. He poured everything into it. Political fury, character depth, visual artistry. It wasn't just a passion project. It was a referendum on Hollywood's broken system. As he explained in the same interview, Norton had been inspired by filmmakers who risked everything for their vision. People like Warren Beatty and Spike Lee, who made masterpieces not because studios asked them to, but because they believed those stories needed to exist. Sometimes you go, wow, like that's inspiring. And I felt like I want to try to take a big swing like that. So he swung hard. And that swing, it might have missed the mainstream spotlight, but it hit every nerve in the industry. Motherless Brooklyn didn't make Marvel money. It didn't have a toy line, but it earned Norton critical praise, standing ovations, and admiration from the exact people who knew what kind of hell it takes to make a movie like that from scratch. It was nominated for a Golden Globe and won the Satellite Award for Best Original Score. More importantly, it proved something. Norton wasn't just a difficult actor. He was a filmmaker, a storyteller, and above all, an artist. The kind of artist that Disney doesn't know what to do with until it's too late. Let's take a moment and look at what Marvel did after Norton left. They introduced the Hulk into the Avengers, used him for slapstick humor, and dialed down his emotional arc to serve punchlines and set pieces. Years later, they tried to elevate Bruce Banner with split personalities, Professor Hulk, but it never touched the tragedy Norton described. Even She-Hulk reduced Hulk to comic relief. Marvel did what Marvel does, franchise first, feelings second. And as Norton watched from the sidelines, he probably realized something gut-wrenching. They never understood what Hulk could have been. Not really. In recent years, Marvel has been retconning history, acting like everything was always part of the plan. But if you dig into fan forums, director interviews, and Reddit threads, one truth keeps resurfacing. Norton was right. His original take on the Hulk, darker, more philosophical, emotionally tortured, matches what fans now crave. The kind of grounded, character-driven content we've seen only flashes of in later MCU projects. Even Marvel's newer creators, like the minds behind Loki and Moon Knight, are starting to sound a lot like Norton did back in 2008, but instead of giving him credit, Marvel just pretends he was never there. No cameos, no callbacks, no thanks for the foundation, just erasure. Let's be clear, Edward Norton didn't walk away from Marvel. Marvel walked away from him. They made it impossible to stay. They cut his creative input. They slashed his pay, they lied in the press, and they hired a replacement before informing him he was out. So when fans say, man, I wish we had more of Norton's Hulk, the truth is, we could have. But the studio didn't want what Norton was offering. Integrity, passion, resistance. They wanted obedience. And now we arrive at the two words that encapsulate the entire saga. Delivered with smirking venom, they weren't shouted, they were declared.
I thought maybe we should try to make one Marvel movie that was at least as good as the worst Chris Nolan movie, but what the hell was I thinking?
That wasn't just criticism. That was revenge served ice cold. Norton didn't need to scream. He didn't need to sue. He made his statement with silence, sarcasm, and superior storytelling. And the real kicker? The fans remember. They always do. Edward Norton's story is more than an MCU footnote. It's a warning. Hollywood doesn't reward passion. It punishes it. It doesn't uplift artists. It uses them until they start asking questions. Norton wanted to elevate the Hulk. Disney wanted to franchise him. And when the two visions clashed, it was the artist who was discarded. But now, Norton's legacy endures, not as just a Hulk, but as the one who tried to do it right. And as the Disney machine rolls on, chasing the next billion-dollar toy commercial, Edward Norton stands apart. Not bitter, not broken, but defiant. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to watch another fascinating video like this, click on one of the boxes on your screen right now.
A full-scale rebellion is brewing behind the scenes at Marvel as stars declare war on Disney CEO Bob Iger. Jeremy Renner's explosive rejection of Disney's insult offer is just the beginning.
I'm like, wow, it's going to take me twice the amount of work for half the amount of money.
Meanwhile, other MCU stars are joining the revolution, publicly condemning Iger's leadership.
There's a level of expectation that they have that is just not realistic.
The shocking secret meetings, career-ending threats, and the 3 A-list stars ready to walk away forever. This is the Marvel Civil War they don't want you to know about. The shocking revelation. Jeremy Renner's insulting offer. In early May 2025, during an interview with the High Performance app that was shared on TikTok, Renner made the jaw-dropping claim that Disney had offered him only half of his previous salary for a potential second season of the Disney Plus series Hawkeye. This revelation, documented across multiple entertainment news outlets including Hindustan Times, IndieWire, and People, came as a particular shock considering Renner's long-standing position as one of the original Avengers and his significant contribution to the Marvel Cinematic Universe over more than a decade. What makes this situation even more remarkable is the timing and context surrounding Disney's offer. As many of you will recall, Jeremy Renner suffered a near-fatal snowplow accident on New Year's Day 2023, resulting in over 35 broken bones and multiple titanium replacements. The actor endured a grueling rehabilitation journey, which he later detailed in his memoir, My Next Breath, released on April 29, 2024. It was against this backdrop of recovery and resilience that Renner claims Disney approached him with the reduced salary offer. In his own words during the High Performance interview, Renner expressed his disbelief at the proposal.
I'm like, I'm sorry. Why? Did you think I'm only half the Jeremy because I got ran over? Maybe that's why you want to pay me half?
The actor's pointed reference to his accident adds a particularly poignant dimension to this dispute, suggesting he felt the offer might have been connected to perceptions about his physical capabilities post-recovery. Adding insult to injury, according to Renner, this halved salary was proposed despite expectations for twice the amount of work and an 8-month time commitment for the second season. The stark contrast between increased workload and decreased compensation left the actor feeling that he had no choice but to decline the offer. It's worth noting that Renner was careful to distinguish between Disney's financial department and Marvel Studios in his criticism. This is not Marvel, mind you. This is like just Disney, not even really Disney. It's just the penny pinchers, the accountants, he clarified. This distinction suggests Renner's issue is specifically with the business side of operations, rather than the creative team with whom he's collaborated for years. The actor's response to the offer was unequivocal. He rejected it outright, telling Disney's financial team to go fly a kite, as he colorfully phrased it. Despite this strong stance, Renner emphasized that his love for the Hawkeye character remains unchanged. I still love the character. I'd still love to do it, but I had to defend myself. What makes this situation particularly interesting is that it's not an isolated incident. Industry observers have noted similar patterns with other actors. John Malkovich, who is set to appear in the Fantastic Four First Steps 2025, revealed he had previously turned down Marvel roles for years due to what he perceived as insufficient pay for the demanding nature of superhero productions. If you're going to hang from a crane in front of a green screen for 6 months? Pay me, Malkovich stated, highlighting the physical and time demands these roles often entail. Additionally, reports have suggested that other actors like Hugo Weaving, who played Red Skull, and Carrie Coon have also walked away from Marvel roles over what they considered lowball offers, though specific details of these negotiations remain less public. To fully appreciate the context of Renner's situation, it's important to consider the typical compensation structure for MCU stars. Top earners like Robert Downey Jr. reportedly reportedly received around $75 million for Avengers Endgame, while Chris Hemsworth and Scarlett Johansson have commanded approximately $20 million per film in recent years. These figures have been widely reported in industry publications, creating a stark contrast with Renner's reported offer. For his part, Renner's MCU earnings have reportedly ranged from $3 million to $15 million for previous films, making the alleged pay cut for Hawkeye Season 2 all the more dramatic. While exact figures for his Season 1 compensation haven't been publicly disclosed, industry estimates suggest the proposed reduction would represent a significant financial step backward for the actor. This controversy has certainly caught the attention of fans, many of whom have expressed strong support for Renner on social media platforms. On X, formerly Twitter, posts expressing disappointment with Marvel's decision have gained significant traction. One notable comment urged, "Pay that man his money," while another user criticized Marvel directly, "Hey, at Marvel Studios, that's messed up, no? Maybe next time you cannot insult one of your original and longest-lasting cast members in a time when you're not exactly lighting the world on fire." Particularly noteworthy is how fans have connected Renner's situation to his personal challenges following the accident. The sentiment that Disney should be more considerate given his recovery journey has resonated strongly within the fan community, with some expressing that the offer feels particularly callous in light of what the actor has endured. Some fans have even speculated about potential future negotiations, with one commenting, "After the reveal and Thunderbolts, and Haley using her new leverage after Hash Sinners, he'll get paid." This references Haley Steinfeld's rising star power following her success in projects outside the MCU, suggesting her increased leverage might indirectly benefit Renner in future discussions. Disney, for their part, has remained relatively quiet about the specific details of the negotiation. An unnamed Disney insider cited by IndieWire disputed Renner's claims, but notably failed to provide specific details to counter his statements. This lack of transparency has only fueled further speculation about the nature of the offer and Disney's approach to talent compensation more broadly. The situation raises important questions about how actors are valued in an era of expanding streaming content and changing business models. For a character like Hawkeye, who has been part of the MCU since nearly the beginning, fans might reasonably expect compensation to reflect that long-standing contribution to the franchise's success. Adding another layer to this already complex situation is Renner's potential involvement in future MCU projects beyond Hawkeye. Despite the salary dispute, there have been indications that Renner might return as Hawkeye in Avengers Doomsday, scheduled for release on May 1st, 2026. In an August 2024 interview, Renner hinted at his involvement, stating he is really excited and thinks he'll probably be doing it. This suggests that while the Hawkeye series negotiations have reached an impasse, doors remain open for Renner's return in other capacities. Production on Avengers Doomsday reportedly began in April 2025, with a cast including Chris Hemsworth as Thor, Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm Invisible Woman, and Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson, Captain America, among others. So what does the future hold for Hawkeye in the MCU if Jeremy Renner were to permanently step away? The most likely scenario would see Kate Bishop, played by Haley Steinfeld, continuing the Hawkeye legacy. The Hawkeye series already established her as Clint Barton's protege, creating a natural transition path. Marvel could focus on developing new storylines for Kate, possibly incorporating her into projects like Young Avengers, which has been rumored to be in development. Such a transition would align with Marvel's broader strategy of introducing younger heroes and passing mantles to new characters, as seen with Anthony Mackie taking over as Captain America from Chris Evans. However, Renner's departure would unquestionably represent a significant loss for the franchise, given his long tenure and the fan attachment to his portrayal. As we continue to monitor this developing story, it's clear that the relationship between major studios and their talent remains a delicate balance of creative partnership and business negotiation. A pattern emerges: Marvel's history of financial disputes with stars. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, which has generated unprecedented box office success over its nearly two-decade existence, has not been immune to behind-the-scenes financial conflicts. In fact, a careful examination of the franchise's history reveals that Jeremy Renner's situation, while certainly dramatic, follows a well-established pattern of salary disputes that have periodically threatened to disrupt the carefully constructed MCU narrative. Perhaps the most famous or infamous early example of such a dispute involved Terrence Howard, who portrayed James Rhodes, later War Machine, in the original Iron Man 2008. What many casual fans may not realize is that Howard was initially paid more than Robert Downey Jr. for the first film, a reflection of Howard's star power at the time, and the perceived risk associated with casting Downey, who was then in the process of rebuilding his career. However, following the unexpected mega success of Iron Man, Howard's compensation was significantly reduced for future projects, reportedly due to budget reallocations that favored increasing Downey's salary. This dramatic pay cut ultimately led led to Howard's departure from the franchise, with Don Cheadle stepping in to take over the role of James Rhodes' War Machine for Iron Man 2 and all subsequent appearances. Howard has been vocal about his frustration with this situation over the years, making it clear that financial considerations played a major role in his exit from what would become one of cinema's most successful franchises. This early instance set a precedent that we would see repeated in various forms throughout the MCU's evolution. Another high-profile dispute that captivated industry attention involved Scarlett Johansson, who had been portraying Natasha Romanoff Black Widow since Iron Man 2. In July 2021, Johansson took the extraordinary step of filing a lawsuit against Disney, alleging breach of contract related to the release strategy for her solo film Black Widow. At the heart of Johansson's claim was the decision to release Black Widow simultaneously in theaters and on Disney Plus Premier Access during the COVID-19 pandemic. The actress alleged this dual release strategy reduced box office revenue, which directly impacted her back-end compensation package that was tied to theatrical performance. Reports suggested Johansson sought approximately $80 million in damages on top of her $20 million base salary for the film. The dispute was ultimately settled in October 2021, with the terms undisclosed but estimated by industry insiders to exceed $40 million. While the specific circumstances of Johansson's case differ from Renner's current situation, both illustrate the ongoing tension between talent compensation and evolving business models in the entertainment industry, particularly as streaming has disrupted traditional revenue streams. Perhaps the most directly comparable precedent to the current Renner situation occurred following the monumental success of The Avengers 2012, which grossed over $1.5 billion worldwide and cemented the MCU as a box office juggernaut. Reports from 2013 indicated that several key Avengers actors, including Chris Hemsworth, Thor, and Chris Evans, Captain America, found themselves in contentious negotiations with Marvel over compensation for future appearances. These actors had signed what were later characterized as ungenerous contracts early in the MCU's development, before its financial success was assured. As the franchise grew exponentially in value, negotiations became increasingly tense. Marvel reportedly offered to triple Chris Hemsworth's contract, though they were not contractually obligated to do so in recognition of his growing importance to the franchise. Robert Downey Jr., who had shrewdly negotiated a percentage of profits rather than just a flat fee for his later appearances, leveraged his position as the MCU's center of gravity to secure increasingly substantial deals, reportedly earning around $75 million for Avengers Endgame, a far cry from the $500,000 he reportedly received for the first Iron Man film. These historical disputes highlight a recurring pattern in Marvel's approach to talent compensation. Initial contracts tend to favor the studio, with renegotiations becoming necessary as the franchise's success grows and actors gain leverage. The frequency of these disputes suggests a systematic approach to talent management that prioritizes controlling costs even as the overall franchise generates extraordinary revenues. But financial tensions within the MCU extend beyond just the major stars. Recent controversies have involved actors who, while not headlining their own films, have played crucial supporting roles in the franchise. For instance, reports emerged in 2025 that Carrie Coon had declined to return to the MCU over a salary dispute, though specific details remained private. Similarly, Hugo Weaving, who memorably portrayed the Red Skull in Captain America: The First Avenger, did not return for subsequent appearances, with financial considerations reportedly playing a role in that decision. The situation becomes even more complex when examining how Marvel's strategy has evolved in more recent phases of the MCU. Industry reports suggest that for Phase 4 and beyond, Marvel aimed to decrease tentpole actor salaries, part of a broader strategy emphasizing character brands rather than star power. This approach reportedly resulted in lower salaries for actors like Salma Hayek, Angelina Jolie, and Richard Madden compared to what earlier MCU stars had commanded at similar points in their tenure. This strategic shift appears to reflect Disney's growing confidence in the Marvel brand itself, rather than the individual actors portraying the characters. While this might make financial sense from a corporate perspective, it risks alienating the very talents who bring these beloved characters to life, as we've seen with Renner's public rebuke of what he perceived as an inadequate offer. The disparity in compensation among MCU actors has also drawn increasing attention from fans and industry observers. For example, while Robert Downey Jr. earned approximately $75 million for Avengers Endgame, Chris Evans reportedly made around $20 million, and Chadwick Boseman earned approximately $2 million for Black Panther, a film that grossed over $1.3 billion worldwide. These significant gaps raise questions about equity and compensation, particularly when considering factors such as screen time, character importance, and contribution to the franchise's overall success. strikes. It's worth noting that some MCU actors have publicly acknowledged the complex nature of these negotiations without expressing outright dissatisfaction. Benedict Cumberbatch, who portrays Doctor Strange, has spoken about the business aspects of joining such a massive franchise while maintaining that he feels fairly compensated. Similarly, Paul Bettany, Vision, has discussed the evolution of his contract from a voice role as Jarvis to a full character with increased compensation, illustrating the potential for positive growth within the system. However, as evidenced by Jeremy Renner's recent statements, not all actors feel that their compensation has evolved appropriately with their contribution to the franchise. His rejection of what he described as an insult offer for Hawkeye Season 2 suggests that despite Disney's immense resources, there remains a tension between maximizing profitability and ensuring talent feels valued appropriately. This tension becomes particularly pronounced when considering the overall financial success of the MCU. As of 2025, the franchise has generated over $30 billion in global box office revenue, not including merchandise sales, theme park attractions, and the substantial value added to Disney's streaming platform. Against this backdrop of extraordinary financial success, offers that actors perceive as inadequate can appear particularly egregious. But financial disputes aren't the only area where Disney and its Marvel stars have found themselves at odds. In recent years, several MCU actors have publicly expressed disagreement with Disney CEO Bob Iger on various issues, from labor disputes to creative decisions. These conflicts add another dimension to the complex relationship between the studio and its talent roster. One notable example is Tatiana Maslany, who portrayed She-Hulk in the Disney Plus series of the same name. During the 2023 writers and actors strikes, Maslany criticized Iger as being completely out of touch with the workers who create Disney's content. She particularly highlighted the wealth disparity, pointing out that Disney's prosperity was not adequately shared with crew, cast, and writers. Her comments were part of a broader industry backlash against Iger's statements during the labor disputes, which many perceived as dismissive of striking workers' concerns. Similarly, Sean Gunn, who plays Kraglin and serves as the on-set reference for Rocket in the Guardians of the Galaxy films, publicly criticized Iger's remarks during the strikes. Speaking from the picket lines, Gunn directly addressed the massive pay disparity within Disney, stating, "I think when Bob Iger talks about what a shame it is, he needs to remember that in the 1980s, CEOs like him made 30 times more than what the lowest worker was making. Now Bob Iger makes 400 times what his lowest worker is, and I think that's a Gee, shame, Bob." Even Iman Vellani, star of The Marvels, has indirectly expressed disagreement with Iger. When asked about her film's disappointing box office performance, Vellani shifted responsibility to the CEO, stating simply, "That's for Bob Iger," and emphasizing that the results had nothing to do with me. While less confrontational than the comments from Maslany or Gunn, Vellani's statement nonetheless reflected a willingness to publicly distance herself from corporate disappointments and place accountability at the executive level. These examples demonstrate that financial disputes like Renner's exist within a broader context of tensions between Disney leadership and Marvel talent. The relationship between the studio and its stars appears increasingly strained across multiple dimensions, from compensation to broader industry issues like labor rights and creative direction. Perhaps most tellingly, even Bob Iger himself has acknowledged shortcomings in Marvel's recent trajectory. The bigger picture: Disney CEO Bob Iger and the future of the MCU. Bob Iger, who returned as Disney's CEO in November 2022 after previously serving from 2005 to 2020, has been a transformative figure in the company's history. Under his initial tenure, Disney acquired Pixar 2006, Marvel Entertainment 2009, Lucasfilm 2012, and 21st Century Fox 2019, dramatically expanding the company's intellectual property portfolio and establishing its dominant position in the entertainment industry. Since his return in late 2022, Iger has focused on reorganizing Disney into three branches: Disney Entertainment, Parks, Experiences, and Products, and ESPN. His leadership has been particularly focused on transforming Disney's streaming business and restoring creativity at the company's core goals that directly impact Marvel Studios' operations and output. However, Iger's leadership style and public comments have occasionally put him at odds with talent, particularly during periods of industry unrest. A prime example of this tension emerged during the 2023 Writers Guild of America (WGA) and Screen Actors Guild American Federation of Television and Radio Artists (SAG-AFTRA) strikes, when Iger made comments that many industry professionals, including Marvel stars, found dismissive of legitimate concerns. In a particularly notable interview, Iger described the strikes as very disturbing and characterized the expectations of writers and actors as just not realistic. Let's examine his exact words.
Speaking of content, we're in the midst of a writer's strike, and very likely it would seem to have a actor's strike How is that going to impact things, and what are your expectations there?
Well, I think it's very disturbing to me. We've talked about disruptive forces on this business and all the challenges we're facing and the recovery from COVID, which is ongoing. It's not completely back. This is the worst time in the world to add to that disruption.
And when directly asked if the writers and actors were not being realistic, Iger responded affirmatively.
So they're not being realistic?
No, they're not.
Why not?
I can't answer that question. I respect their right and their desire to get as much as they possibly can in compensation for their people. I completely respect that. I've been around long enough to understand that dynamic and to appreciate it. But you also have to be realistic about the business environment and what this business can deliver.
These comments sparked immediate backlash from many in the entertainment industry, including several Marvel stars. As mentioned earlier, Tatiana Maslany, who portrays She-Hulk, criticized Iger as completely out of touch with the workers who create Disney's content, while Sean Gunn highlighted the 400-to-1 pay disparity between Iger and Disney's lowest paid workers. The strikes eventually concluded with new agreements that addressed many of the union's concerns, including protections against AI usage and improved streaming residuals. However, Iger's comments during this period created lasting tension between Disney leadership and the creative community, including many Marvel actors who participated in the strikes. This backdrop of labor disputes provides important context for understanding Jeremy Renner's salary negotiation. While Renner's situation predates the 2023 strikes, it reflects similar concerns about fair compensation in an evolving entertainment, a landscape. Renner specifically pointed to Disney's penny pinchers rather than Marvel Studios as the source of his frustration, suggesting that financial decisions at the corporate level are creating friction with talent. Beyond labor disputes, Iger has also made comments about Marvel's content strategy that have raised eyebrows among fans and industry observers. In December 2023, he suggested that the substance of MCU stories was partly to blame for box office struggles, particularly emphasizing what he perceived as too much focus on messages rather than entertainment. These comments drew criticism from creative figures like Peter Ramsey, co-director of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, who defended the Marvels against Iger's implications. Fan discussions on platforms like Reddit also pushed back against Iger's framing, with many arguing that quality storytelling rather than ideological messaging was the primary concern for audiences. More recently, in February 2024, Iger outlined a plan to focus on larger MCU franchises as a strategy to save the superhero universe, indicating a potential shift toward more established characters and properties. This direction might have implications for newer characters and more experimental projects, potentially affecting the MCU's diversity of storytelling. Against this backdrop of strategic shifts and public statements, Disney's offer to Jeremy Renner takes on additional significance. Offering half the previous salary to an original Avenger could be interpreted as part of a broader strategy to reduce talent costs, particularly for Disney Plus productions. If true, this would align with reports that Marvel has been aiming to decrease tentpole actor salaries in Phase 4 and beyond. But while cost control might make sense from a pure business perspective, it risks alienating the very talent that has made the MCU successful. Fan reactions to Renner's revelation have been overwhelmingly supportive of the actor, with many expressing disappointment in Disney's approach. Comments on social media posts reporting the dispute show strong sentiment in Renner's favor, with users urging Disney to pay that man his money and criticizing the studio for what they perceive as disrespect toward an original Avenger. The timing of the offer is particularly notable given Renner's recovery from his near-fatal accident. Many fans have pointed out that offering a reduced salary to an actor who has endured significant physical trauma seems especially tone-deaf. As one ex-user commented, disappointing that Disney won't pay an OG Avenger to return, especially after what he's gone through to get back to acting. This brings us to the crucial question: what could these disputes mean for the future of the MCU? Several potential impacts are worth considering. First, there's the immediate question of Hawkeye's future in the franchise. If Jeremy Renner permanently steps away due to compensation disagreements, the most likely scenario would see Kate Bishop, Haley Steinfeld, continuing the Hawkeye legacy. The Disney Plus series already established her as Clint Barton's protege, creating a natural transition. Marvel could focus on developing new storylines for Kate, possibly incorporating her into projects like Young Avengers, which has been rumored to be in development. Such a transition would align with Marvel's broader strategy of introducing younger heroes and passing mantles to new characters, as seen with Anthony Mackie taking over as Captain America from Chris Evans. However, Renner's departure would unquestionably represent a significant loss for the franchise, given his long tenure and the fan attachment to his portrayal. If Renner were to leave, Marvel would miss his experience and depth as an actor who has portrayed Hawkeye for over a decade. His depiction of Clint Barton as a relatable, grounded hero with a family life has added valuable contrast to the more fantastical elements of the MCU. Additionally, his established chemistry with other Avengers actors has contributed significantly to the ensemble dynamic that has been central to the franchise's success. However, there are indications that despite the Hawkeye series dispute, Renner may still be involved in other MCU projects. As mentioned earlier, he has hinted at appearing in Avengers Doomsday, scheduled for release on May 1st, 2026. This suggests that while television negotiations have reached an impasse, his character might continue to appear in theatrical releases. Beyond the specific issue of Hawkeye's future, these disputes highlight broader challenges facing the MCU as it navigates its second decade. The franchise is currently in a period of transition, with many original stars having departed or taking on reduced roles. This creates a delicate balance between honoring legacy characters and establishing new ones, a balance that could be disrupted by contentious salary negotiations with veteran actors. For more content like this, click on the videos showing on your screen now.